Hey all, it's Sal. I've got a great video here for you today. Now, if you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button. We are growing every day. Everything that I'm going to be speaking about in this video is in my book, From Pre-Med to Med Student. It's available on Amazon.com, so please check it out. Without further ado, let's get started with the video. So today's video is about how many med schools should I apply to? This is a very common question, comes up really often in the application cycle. As you know, year after year, medical school applications get more and more competitive, the application pool gets more competitive, and in general, you just have a better chance if you apply to more medical schools than less. Now, what number is that? So I like to organize the medical schools that you're applying to into three categories. There are your ballpark schools, there are your borderline reach schools, and then there are your reach schools. So what are ballpark schools? Ballpark schools are schools where your GPA and MCAT score fall underneath the bell curve of students that were admitted last year in the application cycle. You can find this on MSAR, and I highly recommend getting a subscription to MSAR. A borderline reach school is a school where you're falling in or around the 10th percentile for either your GPA or your MCAT. So obviously you're still kind of in the ballpark, but you're borderline reaching that school because you're not so much really in the middle of the ballpark, you're on the lower end of the curve. And then finally, a reach school is a school where you do not fall anywhere within the bell curve of the previous accepted matriculated students for the previous application cycle. So this could be, let's say, their 10th percentile for their GPA is a 3.7 and you're at a 3.65, or let's say that their 10th percentile for their MCAT is at a 511 and you're at a 509. So this would be considered a reach school because you're falling outside of the entire bell curve. Now, once you've kind of figured out these three categories, I recommend having 80% of your schools being ballpark schools, 10% of your schools being borderline reach, and then a final 10% being your reach schools. It's very important to make sure that your medical school list is not top heavy or schools that are really, really competitive. And if you follow this 80-10-10 breakdown, then chances are you won't have a top heavy medical school list. Now, how many medical schools should you apply to? I recommend applying to at least 15 different medical schools throughout the United States. So if you're looking at it from a nationwide perspective, then you could look and research various medical schools across the country and see which medical schools might fit with what you have to offer. Certain medical schools are going to look at things like GPA and MCAT and only kind of focus on high scores there, whereas other schools might want to see research experience, might want to see leadership, certain extracurricular skills. They might be primary care focused and you might have a lot of experience either working as an EMT or doing something clinical where it might help you get your foot in the door into that particular school. So I really recommend applying nationwide and having a really broadcast net when you're applying to medical schools. Another thing that's really important is when you are applying to the medical schools, make sure that your secondary application essays are specific to that school. This happens all the time. A student will write one secondary application essay that's supposed to answer a prompt for numerous medical schools, and they forget that they included a sentence in there that may be specific to one medical school, or might even mention the name of that medical school, and then submit it as part of the secondary application. Do not make this mistake. Make sure that every single secondary essay that you're submitting is specific to that school. We review it 3, 4, 5 times. Now, if you don't think 15 medical schools are enough, you may have the question, well, is there even an upper limit for how many medical schools I can apply to? And really all this depends on is how big is your bank account, because as you know, applying to medical school is expensive. Along with secondary application and the primary application fee, you're going to be shelling out big bucks to apply to medical school. So there is an advantage to applying to more schools, which is you're casting a wider net, but the disadvantage is that you have to pay more. Another thing that I would recommend you to do is to go on MSAR and check whether or not that medical school has a high amount of students that were accepted from out of state. This is really important because if you're applying to schools across the nation and one of these schools may not even look at or consider that many out-of-state applications, your application is essentially wasted on that school. So you want to make sure you go to MSAR and check out that school, make sure that it has a high number of out-of-state acceptances, and that way you'll know that your application will actually be reviewed. So to recap, make sure you have an 80-10-10 breakdown when you're making your medical school list. That means 80% of the schools should be within the ballpark, 10% should be a borderline reach, and another 10% should be reach schools. Obviously, if you can reduce the borderline reach and the reach and increase the amount of ballpark, that's better, but there are always students that want to apply to a certain school, they love that school, and certainly you should do that, just don't have a top-heavy medical school list. And I recommend applying to at least 15 different medical schools nationwide. Now, you can apply to more schools and you'll cast a broader net, but again, the disadvantage to that is you'll have to pay more in application fees. So there you have it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and please hit that subscribe button. We are growing every day. Everything that I spoke about in this video is included in my book, From Pre-Med to Med Student. It's available on Amazon.com, so please check it out, and I will talk to you in the next video.